Okay, here's the supplemental video about the hand, if you've been watching the slideshow for the Minotaur costume. So I didn't go over a lot of detail in the photos. I wanted to make a video because it's a little more complex. So here is the finished skeleton of the hand, and I'll skin this later. And so I slide my hand in here, and I had to be able to get my hand inside here without being able to see anything because it's just by feel once the costume is done. So I've got this aluminum bar that I'm grabbing onto, kind of keeps my hand in there. And then I just slide my fingers into these other PVC parts. And then whatever I do gets transferred to the big guy's hand. And so I can do individual movements. I can do all the movements together. I can grasp something. And so I imagine that I grab this aluminum bar, but at the same time, that creates the big guy grabbing something also, maybe some kind of weapon or prop. And so the hand itself is made out of black ABS plastic. And this is just your regular plumbing plastic with different pieces that you could probably recognize. And the white is PVC. Both are great under a heat gun, and you can form and shape them however you need to. And so each individual finger, the gist of it is I've got a rotating finger hold here that pulls this brake cable like you'd find on a bicycle. And then it goes under here through a bicycle brake housing, this little black section here. And then it goes to a smaller section here, brake housing, and then attaches to the tip of the finger. I attach to the tip of the finger because that'll give you the most force when you're trying to pull something. Now, there are some internals here inside the finger that do a pretty important task. So if I just had a cable running from here up to the tip of the finger and I pulled on that cable, the tip of the finger is going to move, and then when that locks up, it'll grab the next section and then the next section. So your finger essentially just curls up into place. Doesn't look really realistic. So I added the internal part, and notice the finger moves as a unit now, all at the same time, no matter which part I move individually. And so I'll try and show you how the internals are by this prototype that I made. Slide this around here. Now I know it's black plastic on black plastic, so just kind of bear with me. So this, and what I did too is I used nails as the pivot points. Here's a 16 penny nail. Get the smooth ones, don't get the galvanized ones. They're too rough. So the nice thing about the nails is it already comes with one, the head on it acts as a stopping point on one side. And so the other side, what I did is I just took a hammer and anvil and flattened it out so it wouldn't pull through, so it stayed in there. So this right here is a pivot point. This is a pivot point for the fingers. And then this is a pivot point. And then I've got this rod that goes through that pivots this long bar here. And then so there's a total of 3 bars in the finger. There's this long one here. Then there's another one here and another one here. So, oh, give me one second. I've got a scrap piece. This is what I threw out, and I'll explain that later. So this is what the internals look like. So I've got a long bar that has 2 pivots on it, and then the 2 shorter bars. Okay, so keep that in mind. I've got the 3-part. You can see the position at which all 3 pieces are attached together. And so inside the finger, see if I can do this, it lines up like this. Okay, so this right here where my thumb is, that is a pivot part for the finger itself. This hole is for the pivot part. And then that last hole is also for the pivot. And I'm talking these pivot points. So that's the component that I took out. And so the long one goes here, attached here. And then this pivot bar for the finger is also attached here on that bar. And then this guy comes up and attaches to this point on the tip of the finger. And so when I move this whole thing, the whole finger curls. And it looks more realistic that way. And then same thing on the big guy. The only thing I changed is I made this section of finger a little bit longer on this one. And so that's how I can move any section of it. The whole thing moves. Okay, so that is these guys here. And now I used black plastic strips thinking that that was a good idea in the beginning. It was not. So halfway through the process, I had one break on me. And it's a pain in the butt to get to. And so it made me really nervous about having a final product that had a potential of breaking on me. I was going to lose a lot of sleep on that one. So what I did, so I went back and I got, this is aluminum. It's 1/16 inch by 1/2 inch. And this replaced the bars that were made out of plastic. And so I just got a lot of this stuff, cut it up, put the holes in it. And that is what you see here. That's the shiny part inside the fingers. So now I went from plastic to aluminum, which I sleep better now. Okay, so fingers. This is a straight part of ABS. And this, this is the ABS stuff I'm talking about. It's just, your black plastic. Go to any hardware store, you can find this stuff. And then just some basic pieces. I'll show you which ones. So this is a straight piece of ABS. And then this is a coupler that I cut in half. So I'll get down here. So this is a coupler cut in half this way. And then it goes, now I glued this straight piece to the coupler. And then there's the pivot point, the hinge, you want to make sure is just right in the center there. And then you're going to have to carve out a little bit to make sure that that functions properly. And then I got another straight piece, and then another coupler glued to another straight piece. And then this piece right here is called a santee. This is a 2-inch by 2-inch by 2-inch T that attaches these two together. Ignore that, we changed our mind. So all the hands are basically, all the fingers, are built the same. And then I came down with a long piece of straight pipe, cut it with a jigsaw, opened it up, and then that gives me the back of the hand. And then you see that aluminum plate is just more support. I love to use plastics and aluminum for their weight and their strength. Try not to use any wood, try not to use anything that might break on you over time. So you want to try and build some longevity into these things. And then down here, I've got an aluminum bar. You know what this is? Is a baluster from a deck rail. So it's just a tube, super cheap, get it at a hardware store. And so the white pieces are PVC pipe, which also do well under a heat gun. And then I use PVC because you can get them in smaller diameters. ABS only comes down to 1.5 inches. So if you need something smaller, just go ahead and use PVC, it's fine. ABS, I used ABS for the majority of this because it is lighter. It's still pretty strong, but it is lighter than PVC. And so, using small parts in PVC won't hurt you. So the fingers have 1, 2, 3 joints. The thumb has 2 joints, just like yours and mine. And so the internals are using the same materials, but they're just a little bit different. There's a bar, you can kind of see it there, that there's a bar that goes from here to the pivot point of the thumb, and then it extends out a little bit. And then this second bar, this is the pivot point of the upper finger. And then here is where the bar attaches to. This bar does not attach to this pivot point. So it goes from here to the extended part, of the shorter bar. Okay? And so these finger pieces here, I made out of PVC. And then the brake cable goes through a hole, fishes through up to the top, and then the housing. The great thing about using brake cable is that it has almost no friction. So you can use this stuff, and you want to make sure that your fingers are not having too hard of a time pulling the costume fingers. So this stuff is super low friction. And then what I do is I use a lock nut and a little bolt to tie off the cable. And so I like using the washers specifically, so it's more of a clamping force instead of that rotational force that might mar your wire if you did not use washers. So try and use the washers, and you just need to use those on the ends when you need to get them squared away. Even this guy has a little tiny washer and setup in there that, you know, I just pinched it closed after a heat gun just to keep it all nice and connected. And then the white part here, this is strapping tape. It's that tape that has these fibers running through it. I'm not sure what the fibers are, but you see them a lot on packaging. Focus, go on. There you go. Okay, so that's the packaging tape. It's not duct tape, don't get confused. So I use this stuff because I did not want these housings coming off. I need them permanent, I need them to stay in there. That's another thing, when you skin a costume like this, you've got all these mechanicals that are garage built. You're real nervous about breaking something because then you have to tear everything apart and redo it. So try and get everything done correctly the first time while it's still open, and then you won't have to worry about it later. So what I'll do is I'll slow down and I'll just show you a lot of the detail work, because I would love for people to know how to do this. Feel free to copy it if you want. I would love to see more costumes out there. This is just my way of getting a really huge hand, but still make it functional. My second costume didn't really have a functional hand, and you'd be surprised how much interaction you want to do with the crowd. So having a fully functional hand is going to be pretty nice. So right now I'm just going to go and just take some slow pictures, pan over it so you can just see what's going on here. So I liked using solid rivets to attach permanent pieces. Always try and use lock nuts. Again, you don't want to take the chance of some nut just coming apart inside the suit. Lock nuts are definitely worth it. This guy just holds the nail on, so I didn't have to flatten out the other side. And I'll take some measurements here too, give you an idea of the scale. So the first finger joint section is 4 inches. Second finger section is about 4 1/4. Third finger section from pivot points are about 6 inches. And then the hands, you know, the hand's going to be just whatever size you really need. My hand being here gives me a lot of extra length, giving that illusion of a huge hand on a costume. So these guys, I needed more pulling distance than my fingers would allow. And so what I did is my finger only goes in halfway, but I made a longer PVC pipe so that the wire could travel a further distance to close the finger to how I needed it. So, you know, I increased the radius of my pulling by doing so. And then the thumb didn't need to go as far. And so the thumb is just a little bit of a different system, so it doesn't bind up. And the nice thing about this is I can function any of the digits without everything getting bound up inside. So I don't have to cross fingers. They don't hit each other. It's fully functional on the inside. And by having the main cable run up on the inside of the finger, then when it is closed, you're not taking up a lot of room. You know, the cable isn't spanning a distance that's going to get in the way of your skinning process. And on mine, I use 1 inch foam, actually 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1 inch upholstery foam. And then on this one, I'm going to put liquid latex over that to give it the illusion of skin. Okay, so enough of that. I'll go back to just scanning in some of this so you can kind of see. So by all means, if this helps at all, that's awesome. I would love to see more costumes out there again. If you have any questions, you know, you can contact us and we'll try to get back to you. So, and again, I know a lot of people have a problem with their fingers, they needing them to straighten out, you know, because these don't. And so I am going to have my skinning process, that foam and latex I talked about, be the part that keeps my fingers stiff. So if I were to wrap this and skin it as a straight finger, I'm going to create a default position for that finger. And so that way, I don't have to pull as hard for the finger to close. And so if I did put a strap across the spine of this finger, then that's just additional force that I'm going to have to come up with on my sissy little girl hands. So, like I said, I'm going to have my default position maintained by the foam and latex. And so on the back, I first went with this is called a plus sign, or like a four-way T, which you don't need. That's why I just cut that part off. Okay. And so I just have some hard rivets, some screws and whatnot to hold everything together. All right. I think that does it. So if there's any questions, feel free. Hopefully that helps you. Thanks. Okay, so here's the completed hand. So this gives you an idea of the size. It's 3 feet long, and each finger is 20 inches. And so I have complete control over it. We'll take a closer look at it.